Hello and welcome to a new edition of Movie Buffs Moving Forward. This is a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Disco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me everywhere at misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
And I'm Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Each week, we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. And today, we're talking about the 2024 film Roadhouse.
I own a roadhouse. Lately, it's been attracting the wrong clientele.
Is there a hospital nearby? Ooh, I just slapped you. Are you alright?
Dalton! Looks like you're having a smashing night!
People seem a little aggressive around here.
Roadhouse, rated R, now streaming on Prime Video.
All right. So if you haven't seen it, it is pretty brand new and we will be talking spoilers, just a heads up. This is a remake of the 1989 film of the same name starring Patrick Swayze, but this time it's about an ex-UFC fighter also named Dalton, like the original. We'll get into it. Who takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse only to discover that paradise is not all that it seems. Which brings us to our very first segment called Getting the Band Back Together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
That's right. This is a segment where we take a slow-mo look at the filmmaking choices that went into the movie and the ass-kicking agents responsible for them, as well as recapping all of the action and drama that went on behind the scenes. And boy, oh boy, does this movie have a ton of drama. So that's kind of where I wanted to start today, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Um, so just a little bit of history. There's a lot of good articles and research online from places like Deadline and all the respected outlets. Definitely go check those out. This is just brief research I did, but as you all know, it debuted on Prime Video last Thursday. But what you might not know is that the director did not want this to go straight to streaming, and so it debuted at South by Southwest, um, whenever like last month or so.
Yeah, a few
Um,
weeks back.
yeah, a few weeks back, and he did not show up because he actively boycotted the premiere. Um, and he wrote a whole letter. He wrote a whole letter, published and like released it online. And so I just pulled an excerpt here. Basically what his beef was about, so you guys can understand. So he says, Doug Lyman, the director, if we don't put tentpole movies in movie theaters, there won't be movie theaters in the future. Movies like Roadhouse, people actually want to see on the big screen, and it was made for the big screen. Without movie theaters, we won't have the commercial box office hits that are the locomotives that allow studios to take gambles on original movies and new directors. Without movie theaters, we won't have movie stars. So before I get into
Mm.
the next thing, what's your reaction just right there, Shani B? What do you think?
I agree. I tend to
Yeah.
agree that we have to be making spectacle events at the theater so we can get people to go. And this movie is a movie that I bet would look amazing on a big screen. I was unable to get any tickets to go to the screening. I was near South by Southwest and
Oh
I was
wow.
trying my best to get in, but everything was already sold out by the time I was like, maybe I can get in here. So I wasn't able to see it, but this is one of those movies where I'm glad I could have access
It's
to
in
it
is it in
right away.
Texas, right? Is that where they
Yeah,
held
it's
it?
in
Yeah.
Austin.
Austin, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted I like having access to it, but watching it does look exactly like a movie that would have been a big theater release. They could have done some kind of popcorn tin, whatever they're doing nowadays to get people excited. And it is kind of a shame that a movie like this, with some really great stuff in it, is straight to streaming and therefore really does cut the audience down a little bit.
Yeah, there was a great article on Cinema Blend. Again, I want like there's a whole bunch of stuff about this that we can't get into because of time, but I like how the author put it. He said there are tentpole. He agrees, and I agree with this too. There are tentpole movies with a capital T, and then there are tentpole movies with like a lowercase t, and that this is like a lowercase t tentpole movie, which I do agree with, but at the same time, if we're talking movie stars, Jake Gyllenhaal does not do straight to streaming stuff, really. Like,
Mhm.
I can't recall him ever has he ever done a straight to streaming movie?
He did do, I can't remember the name of it right now because I always get it confused. It was also about a dispatcher. It was, like, the year
Oh, The
before
Guilty, The
Ambulance. There
Guilty.
it is, The Guilty,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which
And
is
that was
not
a
a
straight to
movie I would
Netflix.
have probably paid to see in the theater, so I think that was like, a smart choice.
Yeah, but,
This
like, a
one I
big
could
director.
see this one I could yeah, that was Antoine Fuqua.
Yep.
So but yeah, this one I definitely could have seen them being successful in the theater. Like, I actually kind of agree with what he's saying. It's not like this is like Joe Schmo. This is an established director, a movie star,
Mhm.
a lot like Conor McGregor's first, movie role, which we'll get into. So
Yes.
there's a lot. There's a lot I agree with about this. And then the other quote that I just pulled from Deadline again says that sources familiar with the negotiations say that the filmmakers and Gyllenhaal were given a choice: make the film for $60 million and get a theatrical release, or take $85 million and go streaming only. They opted for the latter. They took all the money, says one knowledgeable source. So
That's where I get a little
I
squirmy
know
because
exactly.
we talked about on our Oscars recap, we talked about how the screenwriter winner talked about how we don't need to make movies for so much money all the time. And I kind of feel like this movie could have gotten done for 60 million. I don't think
I
they
agree.
needed 85. And I do think that like at a certain point that it's interesting for the director to kind of challenge that because they did give you a choice and you could have been creative. You could have had back end points. You could have negotiated more money for yourself if the theatrical release really was as bankable as you believed. And I do feel like that's where I kind of get stuck
It's hard
because,
because there's a lot of conflicting reports though too, so it's like, take all of this with a grain of salt,
of
like
course.
they could easily be like manipulating what they're saying or telling half truths. I mean, I heard, in some of the research that like Joel Silver, who was credited
Oh,
as a producer on this movie, and the original Roadhouse, of course.
yep.
Um, he basically got fired. It sounds like because he was pushing very hard for a theatrical release, and there might have been some like straight up like harassment of employees though. So it's like
Whoops.
again, there's a lot of like I don't want to just like say like this guy was right or this guy was wrong, and but it does say this is kind of one thing too where MGM originally had this movie.
Hmm.
Amazon bought MGM. It's not Amazon MGM. And
Right.
so, and they promised that, the director, like this was in his letter, I guess, from what I'm remembering, that like they promised him, like, yeah, this will be theatrical and then maybe eventually on streaming is what they, just because and they put that in their press release too, just because we're buying MGM doesn't we're still committed to releasing their movies in the
Hmm.
theaters, and then they pull this move, and so I understand why he feels kind of slighted that they opted just for so I don't know if they straight up like I don't know when they say like they took the money, I don't know who they is in that scenario, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yep.
so it's all very murky. So but yeah, this is just how I wanted to start like that. I think having all of that background and watching the movie, it is kind of crazy that like they still somewhat made like a very watchable streaming movie. Like
Yes.
it is very watchable. I could have seen this in the theater too, but I am not gonna lie that like I would recommend people seek this out on streaming, and the fact that it is available is kind of nice, you know?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, it's that thing where I have always been a person who, if I saw a really good movie in the theater, I hated that we used to have to wait like 5 months to be able to
exactly.
watch it
Yeah.
again. And so I kind of wish there was a better way for them to do, for things to be in the theater and streaming at the same time in some way or at least closer together because I probably would have gone and seen this on the big screen because I like to see action movies in the theater, of course,
Same, yeah.
but I'm so glad that I can just pop it on. Like I've just popped it on in the background several times since I watched it to cover it,
Nice.
and I love
Yeah.
the vibe. Like it
Yeah.
just. I like that we have access to it and that we can rewatch it in such a way. I just don't. I don't know what the trade means in the long term.
Yeah, I also think so. I don't want to spend too much time like litigating like how faithful is this to the original, because I think that kind of is like pointless to a certain extent. But I do
Totally.
think like we can kind of talk about our relationship to it. I just revisited it last week and had a really fun time. And I think there's
Fantastic.
been a lot of, like, criticism I've been trying to avoid of, like, this new one, and I've kind of, seen some people being like, "It's like a cartoon," or like, "It's cartoony and blah, blah, blah," and I'm like, "Have you seen the original?" Like, the original
Uh,
exists in a separate plane of reality that, like, I
yes.
love living in that when I watch it, but, like, there's no police force involved. There's like just like one like shove leads into like an all out brawl throughout like all the bar. Like it's just nonsense, but it's
Yeah.
fun nonsense. And you have like people like Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott and all these like great actors that help like sell it. And so I think like in the same way that like that became like more of a cable hit than like
Yeah.
a straight up like phenomenon, back in the day, I feel like this could have like a similar legacy, like this new one, you know what I mean? Where like this would have been kind of similar, where like critics would have like dismissed it like they did with the original Roadhouse, but then over time it became like a cult movie. And so I
Absolutely.
think I think people need to like allow movies to like live in that space is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Well, you need to trust the audience to enjoy entertainment. Like in my day job, I work with people in entertainment, and people brought it up in their therapy sessions today
Really?
because they had such a good time. Yes, they had
Oh,
such a good
wow.
time watching it. And they were like, "Hey, I don't know if you heard that this new Roadhouse came out." And I was like, "Of course I heard about it. I love it."
Yeah.
Like I feel like it has the same kind of juice that you want. And that's the unique thing about action movies is they're not supposed to be dramas that are so heavily grounded. They're supposed to be able to appropriately amplify something so that it's really entertaining and you want to go into that world. I love the original Roadhouse. I covered it on a quick pump like a couple years ago
Mhm.
now, and I revisit it all the time. It's such a fun idea, it's such a fun world. And I really feel like, this movie found a way to do that for itself in a modern style, to take what it needed from the original source and then figure out, well, what does that look like in 24? And I think the filmmaking was really powerful because the original filmmaking is not so clever in terms of what it's utilizing and like for lighting or cameras or framing or effects, right? Like the original is very gritty, very grounded,
Yeah,
and
I was gonna
this
say
movie
it is
was
it is still a great looking movie. It's shot by Dean Cundey, who's like one of the all-time
yes,
legendary cinematographers, but like I see what you're saying. It is going for a very different vibe, both of them. Just to bring up some of the other like team that worked on this, if we're talking
uh-huh,
about that, Anthony Bagarozzi is one of the
let's
writers on
go.
here. He wrote The Nice Guys, which is like one of my favorite movies of the
Stellar.
last few years. Really
Hmm.
good, really funny Shane Black movie. And you can kind of see some of that humor like come across, I think, in the movie.
Yes.
Also directed by Doug Liman, who's directed like several great movies. That I think some that we've covered. I mean, like the first
I was gonna
Bourne
say he's a
movie.
born guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't direct all of them, but like the first one, which is like arguably the best one, I would
It
argue.
sets
You
the
know what I
standard.
mean? Yes,
Mhm.
that's the standard. Also Mr. and Mrs. Smith,
Ooh,
Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
let's go.
He's done some like legendary action movies. So like when I found out that he was like doing this project, I was really excited. Because I know he has that in him, and like we can talk about kind of the camera style of it. I've also seen some complaints from critics and stuff about that and the use of like digital technology. And
We'll get
I
there.
think it is kind of fair, you know what I mean? Like, there is kind of a CGI digital look, especially when like there's a lot of like quick movement. Like for if it's not I'm not talking about the fight. I'm talking about like a car accident and guy is like
The
flies in the
effects.
air and like
Yep.
really fast. Like every time that happened, it just kind of was like, all right, like this is,
And
this is
those Yeah, those are the pieces I feel like they're where maybe they didn't need to take extra money. Like if if we're
Yeah,
honest,
yeah, yeah.
the CG stuff, the video effect stuff, like that stuff is really expensive.
Yeah.
And I would say that where this movie really stood out to me was in the simple filmmaking. Like there are scenes when there's tension building between characters and the camera is moving in that
Moving around
dialogue.
them, I liked that. The
Yes. Changing
POV,
perspectives.
like, punching
Yes.
into the camera, I thought was, like, really fun. Like,
Yep.
a lot of stuff we talked about
Swinging.
with, like we've done Southpaw and Creed,
Mhm.
which are 2, I think, better boxing fighting films than this.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, like, a lot of the things that we liked about those movies is their kind of experimenting and like authenticity to the fighting. And I do think this has some of that, like
Yes.
it does try for something, whether, that might not have worked for you like all the time. Like it didn't work for me 100% of the time, but like you have to trust that like Doug Liman and that they know what they're doing. They had a plan and they
An
executed
idea.
it. Yeah. And so yeah, like some of that, like I said, some of that digital looking stuff didn't work for me, but like they clearly were going for like we are not going to cut away from these punches. We're gonna show the entire punch into the face.
Yep.
And I didn't read some articles, but I heard like they did some kind of like pillowcase technique to get that done, where like they would hit the actor with a pillow
Okay.
to get that effect of the
Okay.
force, and then like comp in the
Yeah, like
the
layer in the
yes.
images later. I
Which I
guess
think
like
that's pretty cool, you know what I mean? Like
it's very clever.
it again, it might not have worked all the time, but like they're trying new avenues of, fighting scenes instead of doing the like, cutaway or like, you know what I mean,
They're
stuff that
wanting
we
to
see.
push technology to make things look more real.
Yeah.
It's just, we always have to go through that period where the technology is new and it isn't perfect yet. But I have no doubt that like eventually this type of technique will
Will
be
be used.
indistinguishable. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and yeah, like some of like I would say the opening like Post Malone fight, like there was straight up like a CGI
Not great.
fighter guy that like I'm like this is like video game quality, but like when it got to the actual fighters, I felt like there was a lot more they probably could
Choreography.
yeah, choreography that went into it. So I do want to talk about some of these actors or fighters, if you will. So let's go on to our next segment, and this one's called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is where we'll take a look at the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles and sometimes their real muscles for us movie buffs. What performances really stuck out to you? I obviously Conor McGregor is something of magic. But this cast was pretty well rounded. There was a good group here. And, whether they were really known, like some of the famous folks that are in this mix or some of the smaller actors, I feel like everybody was well cast. Minus the doctor. The gal who played
You
Ellie,
didn't
I
like
thought was
her?
like a little miscast. I feel so
Oh,
bad saying it. She's like 35 years younger than Gyllenhaal, so step one, don't like that. But also it just seemed like their relationship wasn't so it didn't feel as connective as in the original, which is I can't believe I'm about
that
to
I
say
agree
it,
with. That I agree
but
with.
they didn't have the same level of like animal chemistry that I think they were trying to portray.
Yeah.
But I like that actress a lot in other things, of
I was just
course.
gonna say, so like I didn't recognize her, but like I immediately was like, this girl is like
That's
a
good.
stunningly like beautiful. Like she has to be a model. Looked it up. She is. She's a
Yes, of course.
Portuguese model and actress.
Yep.
But I was like really amazed like that she was rat catcher in Suicide Squad, the James
Yeah.
Gunn. But because they did all that makeup and like you know what I mean, dirtied
Yeah,
her hair
changed
and
her hair
stuff
color,
like that.
everything.
That's why I
Mhm.
didn't recognize her. But like I thought she did, like I'll agree that it's very underdeveloped. Like that was one if I had to like point, some of the things that I thought could have been better is their relationship. Like
Mhm.
I love the scene where they're in the middle of the ocean in like and
Yes.
just
And the
hanging out.
sandbar.
Yes,
Mhm.
like because when I was in Florida, I meant to wear my Florida shirt by the way today. I fucked up. My bad. But when we were down there, people were telling us about that. Like you can go out there and just straight
Yep.
up chill out. And I was always like curious about that. And so like I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie. So like just to
They
see
do it in
that
Magic Mike. They're out there
I haven't
partying in
seen
Magic
Magic Mike.
Mike.
Confession time.
Oh,
I
you
have it.
especially have to
I
see
do
the
I do
first.
have it. somewhere, but I just haven't popped it in yet. Maybe when Blank Check covers Steven Soderbergh, he's in the running for their next director they cover. If
Okay.
that happens,
Okay.
I will finally probably watch Magic Mike. We'll see. Uh,
But
but yeah,
it is a vibe.
that scene, like I really like that scene because like, you have we've seen this from Jake Gyllenhaal before, not saying it's bad, but we've seen that like you don't want to know me. You're a good person, like that type of shit
Yeah.
before. But I like her pushback. I like, that's something we don't normally see in these movies where she's like, "Don't tell me what I want. Maybe I want a bad guy." You know what I mean? Like
I mean, maybe that's something I could have done for more of, because
Yeah.
that is almost word for word what Kelly Lynch also says to him when he says the same thing to her in the original.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted a more developed relationship, and I was hoping for something like that, and or to just change the dynamic, because I do feel like her character had some like some more character or some more story attached to it, like with her father being a police officer and having a little bit more police
I
involvement
was gonna
here.
say she has a lot more than the original, where it's just like, "I'm Doctor Lady, and I will sleep with you now."
Well,
Like,
it was better that she wasn't also like that the bad guy wasn't also in love with her, because the older bad guy who was a crooked cop was just her dad this time.
I
And
was
weirdly in the
surprised by that
original,
because I was
it's
like
like,
like happy that that was the case because when that they showed that old guy, I'm like, is that supposed to be her ex? Like, hopefully that's not her ex. But that's how
thank
it was
God
in
it
the
wasn't.
original. Like that was
Yes.
how it was in the original. So again, they're updating something. Some of them are a lot better. I really like that scene though. And I think their relationship, like how it develops in the hospital, very natural, just like how it is in
Yes.
the original. Like where she's stitching him up and you have Swayze in there, pain don't hurt. I carry my metal
Yes.
records around with me everywhere. Like some of those iconic, like meet and cute scenes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have it. Jake Gyllenhaal, very intense. He loves this kind of performance. He gets ripped once again. Maybe not
Yep.
as much as Southpaw, but I think that actually works because he's supposed to be a UFC fighter and not a
Right.
boxer. So I think he
Yep.
does have that kind of like leaner look, like
Yeah.
middleweight look to him. I think he's
Totally.
great. I like his portrayal of Dalton.
Same.
It's not going for that brooding Swayze like intensity. It's more of a
They
like
lean in.
it is in there, but like I like how he's just like smiling. Like this dude's just in a good mood. He's
Well,
loving
they
life.
lean
Like
into the fact that he likes to fight. They
he's
lean
yeah.
into the fact that like he enjoys punishing people who deserve to be punished.
Yeah.
And that's like an area where Swayze is like, "Oh, I don't really want that
Yeah,
role,
like,
but I'll
oh,
take it." And there's something nice
I don't
about how
want to
like
rip
they
people's
kind of
throats out, but
embrace.
like you're forcing my hand. Like
Exactly. And in this one, they really embrace the fact that, like, he is
no,
a
this dude straight up
psychopath,
loves
but
it.
he is aware. Yeah, he's aware of
Yeah.
it, and he's afraid of himself, which I think was an interesting thing to give to
Which
his
is why he didn't want a
character in
relationship,
this
which is
rendition.
probably a good thing.
Yes, exactly.
For both
Exactly.
of them. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, he does a good job. And like, one trope I always love is like at the beginning where, the guy like Post Malone backs out of the fight. And it's just like whenever like it's John Wick does the same thing where it's just like, oh shit, you know who that is? Like we don't even know who this guy is, but like everyone's hyping him up like Baba
Hmm.
Yaga, he stabbed a guy with a pencil. Like everyone's like, Dalton, that's Dalton. Like,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah, I'm
this
not
kind
gonna
of
fight that guy.
local hero. And then when he gets to the Keys, it's like even more so because it's like a gossipy small town, which they lean into.
Yep.
Like they frequently reference the fact that it's like a Western, like when
Yeah.
he meets the girl at the bookstore, which I thought she was really funny.
So
I
sweet.
really liked
Yep.
I liked their relationship too and thought that was like a natural thing that didn't feel
Yes.
forced. Like when he's trying to like touch the screen and zoom in and she's like, dude,
No,
that's
you
not
can't do
how
that.
this works.
Yes.
Just like
Yeah,
really
like
like
really
small
giving
moments.
him Yes, giving him more of a well-rounded character where he's interacting with this young woman, and him and the bar owner, Jessica Williams, they're getting
She
to
was
interact a
good.
little bit
She was
more. Yeah,
good.
I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, this world was a little bit more filled out in a meaningful way where like even small characters, like the guy who played Mo, Arturo Castro from Broad City, was
Mhm.
like bringing that comedy to your point about the screenwriter. Just like every time he was on screen, he was making a subtle, fun joke to
Yes.
be like, let's not take it too
Some of them
seriously.
were a
Like,
little
please don't hurt
corny.
me.
Some of them are corny, like the whole like it's called the Roadhouse, and it's a roadhouse, and like this is the boat, and it's a boat. And I was like, all right, bro, how many times we're gonna do this now? Like,
Yes. But
it
when
got,
he's like, after he kills that guy at Magnuson's dad's house and he puts him in the back of the truck, and Arturo is like, oh, yeah, he does look pretty heavy. Like, just trying his best not to do anything to
I
upset
love the
him. I
portrayal of
loved it.
how goofy the gang members are. Like they really do
Yes.
not even attempt to make them hard. So like
Nope.
when Gyllenhaal is like smiling and kind of like toying with them, it's like believable. It's like, yeah, this
Yeah.
guy is like so much better at them at fighting and is like doesn't want to. It kind of does have that Swayze like don't fight only if you have to fight philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But like once you push that button, he's like, "All right, let's do it." Like I
Yep.
actually
I'm
kind
gonna
of
give
like
it to
this.
you.
I'm kind of glad you did this. Like
Yeah, you deserve to get slapped,
Yeah.
right? And so now I will slap
So he
you
broke that guy's
uh,
finger, like the guy who pulled the gun on
with the
him. I
gun.
love that whole
Yeah.
interaction. Um and then we got to talk about Conor McGregor, I think, before we move on, because
The greatest.
debut performance, and I think this is another the last critics thing I've seen talked about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Either you love him or hate him, you know, in this role. I thought he did what he was supposed to do.
I thought he was perfect.
They hired him to be Conor McGregor. They didn't force him to do like an American accent. They were like, keep your natural accent, keep the way you like walk into the ring. Like he walks in that first scene ass naked, like
So awesome.
with just like the swagger to him, you know, on the phone, like the Terminator, like shoulders like chugging along. And it's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to fight this guy either. Like, even though he's naked, the most vulnerable position most of us would be in, he's just like has that confidence to where he's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't care, like say something about me being naked, I'll fuck you up. Like,
Yes,
like
yes. Truly
yeah,
psychotic coming
yes.
off. And I think I like that from the variance of the first one, because, like, in the first one, Billy Magnuson's character was the one who was like, I'm a psychopath and I risk all my men's lives. But in this one, even Billy Magnuson couldn't control him. Like, even he was like, this fucking guy.
Yeah.
And every time he showed up with a weird, warped, psycho smile on his face, I thought he was fantastic. I think if he can play this kind of heel bad guy forever, I'll be so happy.
I
He
guess the
was so
closest
good.
comp to the original was that guy who was like, I used to fuck guys like you in prison, like that, like guy that
Yeah.
was like on the like. You're just like,
Yeah, he's
what?
number one, dude.
What did you say? Like,
Yeah.
like the guy that was just like just over the edge, and like, and McGregor, like, no matter what you think about his performance, he is going for it. He is not like,
Yes.
there's no like some first time actors like really try and like subtly, you know, they don't want to like go too off
Yeah.
this for the screen, like to do too
Right.
much. And it's like McGregor's like, oh, I understand. Like I can just this kind of movie.
This guy's a maniac.
This guy's a maniac. I can just fully like every environment he steps into, he just like swallows up everything in the environment. Like the first time he goes into the roadhouse and he's just like, hey darling, let's dance. And like
Yes.
I'm just like, how could you not love this? This guy's having fun. Like he's just you know, and you're
Perfectly.
just waiting for him to get to Dalton. But like in the same way that Dalton likes fighting, he does as well, but just in a more like sinister, like I don't care who gets hurt type of way. He
Yes.
doesn't have that kind of
Yes.
filter to him. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And yeah, he's not afraid, which is really, really fun, because he too humiliates and embarrasses the gang. Even he is like, these guys are a bunch of idiots. Just epic.
Like some of his
I
throwaway lines I
really
really loved,
pleased.
like when he goes to the pool at the end and like all the bad guys have been kind of taken out by Dalton already. And he's just like,
Hmm.
where the fuck is everybody?
Yes.
Like out loud to himself. Like I feel like the whole cast and crew kind of knew that like we have something with this guy. It's not only going to bring that authenticity that we talked about in Southpaw with bringing in
Hmm.
the real announcers and stuff like that with a real UFC fighter, but
Right.
that is the one UFC guy that I would have chosen. I feel like they chose right. Like there's nobody
Best choice.
that's as big as like just conveys that kind of heel
Yeah, can really
personality.
gaslight with a
Yes.
smile, you know?
And it's just like, and it's like, yeah, I mean, this guy is ripped. He is like that. He is the shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's
Yep.
like, oh fuck, he can back it up. And like just the fact that whenever he really would come in like the Tasmanian devil. He would like crash cars and be like, "Whoops,"
Yes.
and just like
Yeah,
it would.
I don't give a
So
fuck.
in that way, it is cartoony, but like you're either gonna be in or out by that. I feel like, and some critics have been like, as soon as he came, I was out, and I'm like, I don't know. As soon as he came, I was like, I was kind of looking for a bad to like come and fill that kind of role because it was getting a little serious. It was getting a little. They were kind of getting into that Western original Roadhouse vibe, which I
Yep.
didn't mind per se, but like once McGregor came in, it kind of shifts gears, and I was like,
He lifts
okay,
it up.
all right,
Yeah, he
we're
really
going
lifts it up.
for the more campy version, which is the original Roadhouse too.
Yes,
So
yes.
I didn't mind
Yeah,
it.
he really nailed it. You know, like some of the other small parts were interesting. I think like Lucas Gage from Euphoria being a bouncer here is like so interesting.
Yeah,
Just this movie trying to collect all kinds of actors and then also collecting and bringing someone like Connor in. I think the casting was really smart. But again, I don't know that it was as expensive as this budget asks for. So I like the casting a lot in that sense, and Connor
I didn't
for
recognize a
life.
lot of those younger guys that you're mentioning, which like again, so I
Oh,
think I came in pretty like unbiased with it, like
uh-huh.
just so but I thought they all did good like with their small parts. Like I think some of the characters were underdeveloped. We talked about the main relationship already. Like I thought there could have been at least like one more scene with Jessica Williams and Dalton at the end. I was waiting for that kind of,
Yes,
and that kind
same.
of goes unresolved. And I felt like not to completely spoil the ending, but like um there it doesn't have to be like driving off into the sunset. Like there is a meta quality they
Agreed.
kind of talk about. And so like some movies can get away with that, like The Warrior we talked about. Like I love that ending and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. um
Making your own little homestead.
yeah. But they chose to go a different way, I'll say,
Mhm.
and it kind of left me like it kind of left me unfulfilled a little bit, I will say, like
Same.
how they left it.
Same.
So where I was like, you don't have to ride off to the sunset, you didn't have to go that cheesy of a route, but like you also could have like done the middle ground, and you know what I mean, and done something
Yes.
either with the main lady or the girl who in the bar or the bookstore girl. Like there was a lot of other relationships that he had in this town, which I
Yes.
appreciated, but
Yep.
then it's like, okay, but then that's it. Like there's not going to be any resolution here. Which
Exactly.
felt
Yeah.
very re-edited to me. I don't know if you felt that. Like it felt like,
Ooh.
especially in the third act, it felt like there might have been some other drafts. And I will say in the open letter, he does talk about that like they did test screenings for this, and it was Doug Lyman claims that it was the most successful test screenings he's had in his career, which is
Wow.
pretty crazy. And so maybe there wasn't, but like I don't know, it just feels that way. It feels like
A
there was
little
some rejiggering going around in that
in
last
there.
act. So
I definitely agree. It was
yeah.
not as fulfilling as I wanted. Um, but that brings us to our next segment called The Need for Speed.
Pain don't hurt.
That was Dalton, if you didn't recognize, from the original Roadhouse. Pain Don't Hurt. This is where we do what the Oscars don't: honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. What do you got, Shani B?
So, to your point about the CG, the stunts that I highlighted, I highlighted more for the idea of the stunt,
Okay.
like the truck stunt that takes place on the bridge when he's just walking back to his boat, and Dell, one of the henchmen in the gang, it comes at him in a truck. It was just such a cool idea, and I just wish they had done layering instead of computers. Because it
Yeah.
was pretty thrilling to be like, holy shit, he's gonna run your ass over. There's no getting out of this guy's
I
way.
was
And
frequently like, this movie kept me on my toes, like, to your point,
yes.
like, all those, like, for the digital look of it, I will say, like, they come at you, like, I had to rewind for a lot of them
Mhm.
because they, like, maybe I was just, like, dozing off or what, like, I don't know, like, but then, like, as soon and it was like, "Vroom," and it just, like, happened really and I was like, "Oh, shit, hold on, what happened? What happened?" And,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
maybe
they
that's a
really do.
streaming thing, like, where they want you to, like, keep paying attention, to to
I
retain, but I
guess.
don't know. But I noticed that a lot. There was a lot of like very quick car crashes, very violent things happening out of nowhere.
Yes.
Frequently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
execution aside, the ideas, what they were going for, I really, really value. And then just like simply in some of the bar fights, some of the choreography, like there's a point when
Oh
Connor
yeah.
flips a guy over and that he flips the guy perfectly to smash his head
On the
on a
bar.
bar,
I
and it
had that as
looked great.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked fantastic. Those kinds of little things, I feel like I just wish there was more of that authenticity and less computers to try to get the point across, because like it does feel really scary. It does feel like, oh, I almost looked away. So I guess maybe there could have been something more streamlined in it, but
Yeah.
I definitely the end stuff on the boat stunts, car stunts, those are my favorite.
So if you had to pick one, that would be your one that you thought was
I
the
think
best?
the boat stunts in the end will be the one that I pick.
Okay.
When they play chicken together with two boats just like flying towards each other, that
Again,
is
that's
just
one
so
where it's
good.
like it's so ridiculous that like the dude's like flying like oh
Yep,
they
but I'm here
really
for
go
it.
for it. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm with I chose to go for a little more of the smaller moments. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school.
Hmm.
I really like, they put in the trailer like the slap part where he's like
Yes.
slapping the guy like he's like, oops, I just slapped you. And he's like kind of toying with him. And then he does
Yes.
like three slaps and the guy kind of braces for the third time and then he slaps him on the other side. Like just really small, like, yes, exactly. Like, ramp up the action in those kind of ways, those simple ways.
And
Um,
playing the beats, like a good
yeah.
action movie knows the beats of a fight scene, knows how to lift the tension, but then also surprise you. And I feel like the several times they subvert the expectation, both in that slap scene, but then
Yeah.
also in some of the like knife work that they do when he's dodging knives, you
I was
know?
gonna mention that. I like when towards the beginning, some guy just stabs him like straight up in the stomach. and
Yep. And
he's
he's
just
like,
walking around with it. Jessica
yep.
Williams like, oh shit, like, do I need to call you an ambulance? She says ambulance, by the way.
She must be referring to his film.
I was
Yeah.
thinking that. I was if we make a T-shirt, that's got to be the T-shirt, right? Ambulance with his Roadhouse character hanging off of it.
Yep.
Ambulance. That was one I noted. I think my number one though, we know we are suckers for car and vehicle stunts. And so a lot of the vehicle ones I thought looked a little too CGI for my taste, like the one on the train where he like
Yeah.
almost commits suicide. I thought it was
Yeah.
could have been a powerful moment, but kind of took me out with the CG.
Mm-hmm.
The one that really I thought was shocking and also made sense and looked pretty good was using the dynamite on the boat at the end. I thought that was
Yeah.
cool as hell. I was
Yep.
not expecting it. I'm kind of the whole time I'm thinking what's his plan here? Like how I like they do show the bag multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
but I just wasn't sure what he was going
How he was
for
gonna
with
use
it.
it.
Yeah, and so when they
Yep.
finally, Chekhov's dynamite bag, they they
Yes.
it's a really satisfying moment. He saves the girl and I just love how he navigates that whole scene. Like obviously the dad was full of shit and saying like
Yep.
my daughter's in danger and he's
I'm
like
gonna help
you're
her.
awfully relaxed for someone who's like just calling him out and just
Mhm. And then
all
the way that he's like, "That guy's gonna be really mad, that guy I stole the boat from,"
yeah
and you're sort of like, "What's he talking about?"
yes the
And then you
boyfriend
realize, yep,
yeah so that's my number one. I thought perfectly executed, great stunt, wasn't expecting it and looked really good. I thought
yeah,
for a digital effect probably. I don't know if they really blew up a boat, who knows. That's how good it was.
there you go, there you go.
But that brings us to our next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where we take a look at the movie's body count and see who bit the dust the hardest. Which kill really stood out to you?
So we kind of this has been a segment in the past, obviously, like we're not changing things up too much, but we always talk about like some movies don't have that dramatic of a body count. This is falls under that. I think it's more stunt heavy
Mm-hmm.
than body count heavy, so it kind of made this a little easy, I would say. The crocodile eating a guy, another like stunt slash death I was not expecting.
Nope. Even
I
though they warned us, even though they were like, beware of the
You
crocodile.
wear the crocodile, but, like, I think it's smart too because, um, while the first one very callous towards death, a lot of people
Yes,
die in the first Roadhouse, and they kind of are
easily.
just like, "There's no cops anywhere, like, there's no police presence, there's no one gives a fuck." I was wondering at a certain point, how are they gonna deal with that in this movie? And
Hmm.
I thought it was really smart, like, he doesn't kill that guy, he actually tries to help him out, and the croc gets him. And so that's how he gets out of that situation. But like, yeah, you don't see a lot of croc murders in action movies. Horror movies, yes. Shout out to X. Was
Of
probably the
course.
last one I can think of with that. But yeah, so that was interesting. I like the Conor McGregor fight at the end. Although there was revealed not really a death. So I don't think I can go with that. I think,
Mm,
there's a potential that there could be a sequel. Jake Gyllenhaal has expressed
I
interest.
want that.
Obviously McGregor's still alive, but I just think like using the wood pieces as weapons
Very
is
good.
so dirty. It feels like something that would be in a bar, like that had like a
Hmm.
fight, just like these pieces
Yeah,
of
anything that you can get your hands on to kill this guy with is what
yeah.
it felt like.
And then the yeah, the guy he just straight up kills with the
That's my
throat
favorite.
punch. That's also my favorite. I reveal my cards too. Just
It just
because that was another thing I was thinking of. How are they going to top the throat rip? The throat rip is one of the most iconic scenes of the original Roadhouse. I don't think they're gonna get as grisly, but like the way they did it, again, very smart. It's like more technical. He's like, I just punched your aorta, and like
Yep,
you're not gonna be able to breathe now. And then the guy kind of just like falls in the pool and drowns. And it's like
totally.
I kind of
And
wanted a
he's
little more of that, if I'm being honest, like him being surgical with his punches and stuff like that. But I thought in that case, that's what made it my favorite, is that it was like so brutal. He's
yeah,
like, this is when the switch flips in him, and he's like, I'm gonna enjoy this now. Like
that's
now you
right.
guys have to deal
Yeah,
with the
now
psycho side of me.
that's right. I have a plan now because I think he also like used that death as a tool. He like turned that into part of a master plan, which I really really appreciated. And I think maybe my second favorite is I love when Billy Magnuson is there at the end and Connor is sort of like, "What does it take to shut
Shut
you
you
up?"
up.
And he just
Yeah.
kills him.
Yeah. I
It's
thought that was
so
gonna be a
awesome.
bigger moment, honestly. That's the only reason it didn't make my top 3, but
Loved it.
still a memorable moment, I guess, like, nonetheless, where because, again, the way they treat concussions in this, it's like, even the dynamite thing, like, would have, like, made a lot of those
Got
guys just,
somebody.
like,
Totally
laid
drowned
them
because they
down
were
and
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do anything, but, like, these guys are superheroes. This is Fast and Furious logic, that they're using
Yes.
in here, where like there's no like concussions they can't fight over,
Yep.
like
That's right.
so and a lot of the bar fights, as cool as they were, there's not a lot of death in them, so it kind of like disqualify them, I guess. But like, yeah, when McGregor uses the golf club on the one young guy, I was like, damn, broken ribs right there, that guy's out
Ow.
for the count.
Yep.
And a lot of those like pool sticks, are used, and a lot of just those types of things, but not a lot of death. So that's why I kind of made this a little
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, that takes us to our next segment, exit wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Thank you, Arnold. This is where we talk about the film's imperfections and decide whether they are fatal hits or just minor flesh wounds. Shani B, we covered a lot of this, I think, already. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but
Yeah.
what were some things you didn't love, I guess?
I think, yeah, really for me, the only parts that I think were hard to overcome were when they chose computers over practical stunts. I
Yeah.
never like that. But I do think here it maybe made sense. They were doing some really ambitious things with those stunts, and it's really just the CG. And I guess the only other thing that always trips me up about both the original and this one is like, where is the FBI? There's just like
Right.
no way that
Well,
the
the
FBI
original
like
references
isn't aware,
that the big bad has the police in his pockets, and that's how they
right?
explain it off. Just why would I like?
But
There's
there's
nothing I
always
can go.
internal affairs,
Right.
like
So I like in this one that there is at least some police presence to where Dalton has to kind of cover it up, like trying to knock that guy out with a stick, so he has short-term memory loss, or
Yes. And they
th
talk about the difference between the right cops and the
I was
wrong
just gonna say
cops.
that the wrong cop showed up to this scene, because
Mhm.
of the reference to like the ex boyfriend or whatever she calls the ex boyfriend.
That's
So
right.
that again, he's not a complete douche, like a lot of ex boyfriends in these movies are. Like he actually does serve a purpose in this. They use his boat.
Yep, he's got
Uh,
a dope boat.
yep, dope boat. I like when he's stealing the boat and he's just like, "Don't get a scratch on it," and he's like, "It's a fucking boat." I'm like,
Yeah, I'm on the
"It's
water.
water."
The best is how when they introduce that guy finally, because we've heard about him across the movie, and what he's
Yeah.
talking about on the phone, he's being like, "I don't know what to tell you. I really like to wax my boat." Like, his lines are meant
That
to be
guy
like,
always
"This guy's
plays
an
a douche
idiot."
in movies too. I don't know his name, but
He's
like
so
he
good at
he is
it.
in the Friday the 13th remake as like the
Hell yeah,
douchey
he is.
boyfriend. Yeah.
Yes, best line
That's
about
right.
boobs I've ever heard. It's
Yeah.
so good.
What is it? What does he say about them? They're
He says,
stupendous. They're
"Yeah, your
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 tits are
tits are
stupendous.
stupendous." Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
and he
Great
sells it
job,
with
man.
all honesty, just like
Yeah.
he's able to sell this with all
You know what?
honesty.
Those tits were stupendous. I agree.
Hey, hey, I can't argue with it. But
um
it's true. Yeah, even that small, like, singular line is meaningful here.
on that note, I will say the sexual tension is lacking in this. Like Swayze, you're never gonna, that guy was sex in a bottle. You're never
Yes,
gonna match that. I'm sorry,
it's
Jake
true.
Gyllenhaal. You have a very excellent skill set in different things, but sex appeal is not really one of them. I
Yeah,
think.
not like raw sexuality,
Yeah.
you know?
So like, yeah, I like the fact that she was the more dominant one when it came to the relationship. I like that kind of change, but there just
Mhm.
wasn't enough. There needed to
Agreed.
be more of that. That was one. I talked about how the ending left me unfulfilled. It was kind of floating at this one rating, which we'll give in a second here. And when it got to the end, I was like, oh, that kind of, I don't know if I can stick with the rating I had in mind anymore, because the end, the endings are important, and you want to leave the movie going, fuck yeah, I'm ready for Roadhouse
Yes.
2. And so there was a
Yes.
post-credit scene that kind of was like, all right, like I can see it, but I wasn't like fully like fist pumping, like, yeah, let's go. I'm ready for the
Mhm.
next one. So um yeah, just relationships in general, I thought were, um, in favor of the action in the second or third act, which was cool in some instances, but in other instances, I was like, I felt like, why why didn't we, the guys that he trained at the bar, they could have come back at the end and helped him out, or like, you know what I
Yes.
mean, took on some of the other like lesser thugs, or
Yes.
Jessica Williams, um, I don't know, like, we don't see her getting any cut of the money. I'm hoping that she does,
I
but like
know.
there's no, she's like, this isn't too bad. I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, half of your bar is like completely
It's
blown
been
up. Like,
destroyed.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, so there was like, you don't want those type of questions. Like there should have been some more resolve there. That's
Agreed.
that's pretty much all I had though. I would say for as far as and then the digital stuff, which we covered pretty extensively, which
Yeah.
I'm always gonna be physical over like the more raid style, John Wick style, but that's
Same.
not what they were going for. So we have to take it at
Respect the artist.
what they were going for. So worked well, most of the time for me. Will probably for other people it would be distracting. I understand. Um,
Agreed.
which brings us to our last segment of the evening. Game over, man.
Get to the chopper!
This is where we'll give our overall thoughts on the film and a final rating out of 5 sticks of dynamite, since those are Dalton's choice. What do you give this film? What's your final rating?
So as I kind of hinted at, I was kind of floating at about 3.5 dynamite sticks, I
Okay.
would say,
Okay.
for most, about half of the movie, and then it kind of started losing me towards the end for a lot of the reasons we already
Ooh.
mentioned. So, for that reason, I am comfortable with a 3, a clean 3
Clean 3.
dynamite sticks. I think it's very watchable. I'd recommend, if you're, like you said, like even on in the background, like watch it fully once. But then I think like it is one of those like you can just have it on the background after that, after you have seen it, and you'll
Mhm.
probably like, get a kick out of like some of the more action scenes. I like when he gets those guys involved at the bar, you know what I mean? Like some of those smaller scenes. I would, revisit those and see, because I like how, the one guy's like, you got to use your knees more. Like he starts training the other guy, like,
Yeah,
what I
don't
mean?
forget. Don't forget.
Live with your knees. So there's like a
Yes.
lot of like little jokes and stuff like that. We didn't talk about the like where's the closest ambulance, when he's like the first fight he
Yes.
ever gets into at the roadhouse, and he's like, you got medical insurance, like how good, oh, the ambulance is about 20 minutes or 25 minutes away depending on the traffic, and then like becomes like a recurring joke. Like there's a
Yep.
lot of fun stuff in here. Like I feel like it's getting a little bit shit on a little unfairly. But last time I checked Rotten Tomatoes, it's about like a 63% or something, which I think is where I'm at. I think that's pretty
Okay.
fair, So what about you?
Well, I'm a notorious easy grader, and I had a great time watching this. I'm already vibing on it, so I think I'm gonna give it a 4.
Yeah.
4 sticks of dynamite from me. I liked the changes and the updates. I feel like they kept the most important bones of the original as best as they could, and they did pretty well with them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think if you like good stunts, if you like good fights, if you like surprising action, you will enjoy this movie, right? Like I do recommend it. It was a great time.
Yeah, I mean, like, you put both of our grades together, that's about like a 3.5. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we're
the
pretty much
average.
at like we're splitting the difference there. So I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for us, though. Definitely let us know what you guys thought of the new Roadhouse. Does it stack up to the original, or did you disagree with us that this wasn't what you expected? But yeah, remind the people where they can find us, Shandy B.
Well, get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Yes, and take us for a ride and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Follow me on all the socials at misfit_minded and my website at misfitminded.com. Thanks again for watching and listening. Join us next week. We'll be covering the original Mad Max, and we'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then, stay
Stay
buff.
buff.